When we first see the heavily tattooed Callisto in the X-Men The Last Stand movie, we do not quite understand what a crucial character she is. Sure, throughout the movie, Callisto makes it very clear that she does not like Storm and repeatedly fights with Ororo even though Storm defeats her. However, when we look at her comic book counterpart, she is so much more fleshed out. Present in the X-Men series since 1983 and introduced back in the 169th issue of the Uncanny X-Men, Callisto is the leader of the Morlocks, mutants who dwell in tunnels and do not have such good feelings towards humans. But do they have a valid reason for that hatred? Let's find out together as we dive into her backstory.
Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, then please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin.
Origin story of Callisto, the Morlocks commander. Now when it comes to our spunky Callisto, we do not know a lot about her past. However, whatever we do know makes it obvious as to why she is not so kind to humans. We learned that Callisto is a very pretty girl. She had quite a cozy life until, well, her mutant powers manifested. The moment the powers showed up, things changed for her completely. She went from being liked and appreciated to ignored and hated. It is no secret that the treatment a lot of mutants got in the hands of humans was quite abhorrent. Sadly, Callisto was one of the mutants treated with extreme cruelty. She was blinded in one eye and left scarred. This type of brutality forced Callisto to change her outlook on life. Gone were the days with rose-colored glasses and her optimistic outlook about cohabiting in the same space with humans who did not have powers. Now, she knew she was hated because she was a mutant, and on top of that, the disfigurement left her with a scarred face, which made her the subject of a lot of unwanted attention. Because of all that combined, she decided to go far away from the prying eyes of society. In what place might that be where she could hide away from the crowd? Why, a seedy underground tunnel, obviously. The place she chose was the alley that was built in the 1950s under Manhattan. She turned that place into her home, and that was where she decided to take the name Callisto, after the Greek mythology where a nymph with the same name was seduced by Zeus and turned into a bear for her relationship with Zeus, which she did not even consent to in the first place. Now, she was not the only mutant who had gotten terrible treatment from humans after developing the powers. There were many more mutants, and soon enough, Callisto ran into Caliban, who had the handy power to locate other mutants. Thanks to Caliban, Callisto soon ran into Sunder, who was devoted to her, and Mask, who caused quite the situation in her life. Obviously, Callisto did not know about the treacherous path that Mask would undertake, because had she known about it, she definitely would not have taken Mask in her group. But since she did not, the four of them soon became a team, and together they started seeking out more mutants treated badly by the humans and were, in general, outcasts who needed a place to call home. The numbers soon grew, and Callisto, the leader of this army of mutants, decided to give them the name Morlocks. The name is a homage to the lower caste monsters who dwelled under the surface, as mentioned in the novel Time Machine by the phenomenal writer H.G. Wells. One thing we need to mention as we're talking about the formation of the Morlocks is that in the X-Men lore, we find out this whole thing of Callisto finding the alley, calling it home, meeting Caliban and others, and building up the Morlocks was all orchestrated. It was pre-planned by Dark Beast, who is basically the evil version of Hank McCoy from a different timeline. But this whole theory was hinted at. Now, fast forward a few years, and by this time, the Morlocks have grown in number. Callisto is the leader and has a lot of responsibilities on her shoulders because of the rising numbers. Over the years, the pressure of technically leading an army of mutants has sort of driven her a little crazy and irrational, and we see that play out when she literally kidnaps Angel, a member of the X-Men, as a concert. She cut off his wings, trying to keep him with her, and obviously this was done in front of his teammates from the X-Men who were captured alive. The X-Men were highly trained, but they were quickly overpowered by the sheer number of the Morlocks, so they had to sit there and watch the marriage between Callisto and Angel. When they tried to fight, the X-Men had to go up against the Plague. The Plague had already infected Kitty Pryde, and she was almost on the brink of death. Plague had also touched Storm, giving her a deadly ailment, which evened out the fight as Nightcrawler had already subdued Callisto by then. However, as the tension rose, Caliban came up with the idea of dethroning Callisto by combat. This idea was definitely something plausible, and Nightcrawler demanded a duel. However, Ororo asked him to stand down because she wanted to go against Callisto herself. Now, Callisto did not see Storm as a threat. In her eyes, Storm was soft and not a worthy opponent at all. So instead of ending the duel as quickly as possible, Callisto tried to drag it on. She taunted Aurora to assert her dominance, and what do you know? That did not turn out too well for her because soon enough, Aurora twisted her cape around Callisto's hand and drove her knife into Callisto's heart, winning the duel and the leadership of the Morlocks. Now, a few things happened because of this one. 1, the X-Men were able to save their lives, and 2, this led to hatred between Callisto and Storm. This hatred is the one thing that we get to see in the movie that is common with the comic book Callisto, even though nothing else is the same. But as we follow Callisto's arc, we do get to see her eventually let go of the hatred that she had for Storm and instead start to respect her after their collaborative adventures together. The relationship between the Morlocks and the X-Men became the strongest when Professor X was saved by Callisto from an anti-mutant protester who was about to hurt him. Callisto's unexpected journey as Moira MacTaggart's loyal protector. Now, at one point, the Morlocks were attacked by the Marauders. Marauders were a group of mutants under the control of Mr. Sinister, who, as the name suggests, was not a good guy at all. The fight between the two groups was quite brutal, and Callisto barely escaped alive. While gravely injured, Callisto was taken care of by Moira MacTaggart. MacTaggart took Callisto with her to Muir Island, Scotland, where she was able to take care of the surviving Morlocks and their leader in peace. The kindness that Moira showed Callisto truly moved her heart, and Callisto appointed herself as Moira's personal guard, which was quite sweet. Callisto even started working with Cyclops against the mutant-hating Master Mold. Now, while they were a duo at one point, Moira and Callisto ended up in an alternate reality where Britain was dominated by Nazis and their Nazi counterparts ended up on the main timeline. The Nazi versions of the ladies captured Alistair Stewart in the Tower of London, but failed to escape from there. Before the Nazi versions could do more damage to the reputation of the ladies in the main timeline, the pair were able to switch back to their original timelines. Life was going well for Callisto, and if you knew anything about the lives of heroes, you would know that this was not going to last very long. Soon enough, Callisto was captured by Mask, her old comrade. While she was away, Brain Cell, a telepath, had enslaved all the remaining Morlocks. Mask decided to give Callisto her beauty back, knowing very well that it was something that was very close to her. Not only did Mask give it back, but he also made sure to increase her beauty even more. This was not done as a kind act. He did it intentionally so that he could use this beauty as leverage and hurt Callisto whenever he could. He would taunt her by taking the beauty away whenever she ended up in the alley. On top of this, under Bliss's control, Mask set Callisto free in New York City. There, owing to her beauty, Callisto was able to start her career as a model. While doing so, she met an amnesiac, Colossus, who was currently going by the name of Peter Nicholas. He was an artist and he found Callisto quite attractive. Callisto, too, soon found herself having a soft corner for him. Now, Mask was still very much in the picture, taking away Callisto's beauty whenever he felt like it. So eventually, Banshee, Forge, and Jean Grey showed up to save Callisto from that. Once saved from Mask, Callisto thought she could finally lead a normal life. She focused on her modeling career and her newfound relationship with Peter. However, Mask was not yet gone. This time around, he decided to turn all of the remaining Morlocks into these gross mutated versions of themselves and sent them after Callisto. The Morlocks showed up and beat Callisto to near death. Luckily, the Morlocks' healer was able to help Callisto escape, and together they showed up at the X-Men's doorsteps for help. The healer used the last of his remaining powers to help Callisto, and while she recovered, her previous disfigurements came back, which was something that Callisto did not want. Callisto was extremely angry at the loss of her beauty, and she was enraged at her previous allies. Using that as an opportunity, Mikhail Rasputin, Colossus's brother, asked her to join him in taking revenge on the Morlocks. By this time, Colossus was out of the picture as he had become the puppet of the Shadow King, and so it was understandable when, in her rage, Callisto agreed to go and take revenge on her previous allies. Mikhail and Callisto went to the alley where the Morlocks were, and when Mikhail used his power over matter to flood the tunnel, it was assumed that Callisto perished as a result of this power as well. Rising from the shadows, Callisto's transformation into Tokyo Arena. However, that was not going to be the end of Callisto, and we all knew that. 2 years later, Callisto came back with Marrow, a new mutant with whom she had an almost mother-daughter relationship. At first, Callisto and Marrow went down the villain's path, and as a result, they clashed against Storm and Cable. They even tried to kill off Guy Rich. who supported the whole Operation Zero Tolerance, only to be stopped by Spider-Man. However, at the end of everything to save Spider-Man and Marrow, Callisto threw herself in front of a Prime Sentinel, sacrificing herself. She was severely wounded and she was taken back into the sewers. There, Marrow took care of her wounds. However, the Dark Beast, aka Evil Hank McCoy, showed up and manipulated Callisto quite a bit, so she urged Marrow to join the X-Men so that she would never have to be alone. Now, I don't know about you, but I kind of thought that this would be it, sort of to Callisto's arc, like she formed a motherly relationship with her protege and sent the protege away for the sake of safety, and then what else? Well, let me tell you what else. Soon after all of that, Callisto returned to the comic books as a gladiator in the revamped version of the arena in Tokyo, and who brought her back? You guessed it, it was Mask again. Mask had given her tentacles, this time around making her look extremely terrifying. Callisto was leading her life as a gladiator when one day Aurora showed up. Storm was pressed into attending the show at the arena, and there, once Callisto saw Storm, she decided to join hands with Storm and her allies to get out of the clutches of Mask. Mask was caught, and soon enough he was begging for forgiveness and wanted to be let go of. He offered to turn Callisto pretty again, which was not something that she cared about anymore because she was perfect in her eyes. This moment signified the closing of a huge chapter in her life because throughout her character arc, Callisto had been extremely sensitive about her disfigurements. Her disfigurements were a constant reminder of the hatred that she faced, and finally seeing her come to terms with it was definitely a huge moment for her and for us as fans. So honestly, we loved her for that. Kalisto Struggle in the wake of M-Day's devastating aftermath. When M-Day happened, a lot of mutants lost their powers. Callisto was one of them. She had an extremely hard time dealing with the loss of her powers. Even the tentacles that she had, thanks to Mask, had gone away as well. He was in Genosha when Pietro, aka Quicksilver, found her. Callisto had been self-harming to cope with everything, and when Quicksilver showed up with the Terrigen Mist, claiming that it would bring back all of her powers, of course, she agreed. She took the Terrigen Mist, and yes, that brought her powers back, but in ways she had not expected at all. The Terrigen Mist returned her power tenfold its capacity. As Callisto had his super senses, her senses got so heightened that even a mere drop of water would cause her a lot of pain. He even ended up hospitalized at Victoria Hospital on Mahi Island, Seychelles, which was run by the Hub, who was helping Inhumans find the loose ends of the mist trails. Once Callisto had gotten over the super heightened senses, she returned to America. First thing she did was join the terrorist organization called the Exel. It was formed by depowered mutants who thought that the government was behind this whole M-Day. Callisto did her part and warned the other mutants not to trust Quicksilver and his Terrigen Mist, but that did not work out too well. Most did not listen to her, and the only mutant who did not go through the Terrigenesis was Marrow. Soon enough, Layla Miller brought the proof that it was the Maximoff twins who brought upon the M-Day, and that led to a fight that made sense. As Exel fell apart, Callisto went back to the sewers. Callisto stayed in the tunnels and pretty much minded her own business. She did not bother with the outside world until it came knocking at her doorstep. When teen runaways showed up in the subway, Callisto decided that the best call would be to take them in and give them a place to stay. So she started bringing the runaways in. Now, there was a teen named Angie, and she was taken in by Callisto, but Storm did not know that. She assumed that Angie was kidnapped, and while trying to track her down, she showed up at Callisto's hideout. Storm and Callisto had a little conversation, and Storm offered to help out Callisto with the supplies because despite their history, Storm knew that the kids were safe with Callisto, even though she forced everyone to go back to their homes. Later, when M-Pox happened, the number of mutants escaping to the sewers became quite high. Callisto gave those mutants space in her tunnels. When humans showed up at the tunnels fearing for their lives, Callisto gave them space as well, showing that she no longer harbored the same animosity towards humans that she started out with. Under her care, the type of mutant-human cohabitation that Charles Xavier had envisioned came to fruition. This new group came to be known as the New Morlocks. However, soon after this, Callisto was captured and was seen serving time in the Robert Kelly Correctional Facility for Mutants. Eventually, Callisto came to Krakoa, and after dying at the hands of Storm in the Crucible, following the Krakoan protocols, she was brought back to life and her powers finally returned. Beyond the comics, Callisto's diverse media odyssey. Outside comics, we have seen Kalisto make a few appearances. When it comes to the film series, we see Kalisto in the movie X-Men: The Last Stand. Here, Kalisto is the leader of Omegas, and she later joins hands with Magneto and becomes a part of the Brotherhood Mutants. She does not have the scars or the eye patch that we have gotten so used to. Instead, here, she's heavily tattooed and quite beautiful. Her powers are a mix of Calibans and Quicksilvers, giving her the ability to detect the mutants and their power levels, as well as great speed, respectively. The phenomenal Daniel Ramirez did a great job at portraying this character. In the X-Men the Animated Series, Kalisto did not kidnap Angel. Instead, she and the Morlocks abducted Jean and Scott. However, the teammates were able to save them soon enough, and Storm did not stab Kalisto in the heart because of the censorship. However, we see Kalisto, voiced by Susan Roman, return several times throughout the runtime of this animated series, including the Christmas special. But in the X-Men Evolution, Saffron Henderson's Kalisto had a different personality. She was much more even-tempered, and she wanted to lead that peaceful life unlike her comic book counterpart. She sabotaged a beverage company that was poisonous to mutants and urged the X-Men, Spike and Leech, to lead a peaceful life. When humans attacked the Morlocks and were living in the tunnels, Spike and Leech joined in the fight out of their admiration for Kalisto to help protect her and her people. In this interpretation of Kalisto, she is far softer than she is shown in the comics. The ever-changing power dynamics, Callisto's versatile abilities. While the movie version of Kalisto was seen to have super speed and the ability to recognize the levels of mutants, the comic version of Kalisto did not have that. Instead, her powers were more about heightened senses. All of her 5 senses were height, which played a role in helping her. Other than her enhanced sight, smell, vision, touch, and hearing, she had an intuition that came in handy whenever she faced off against opponents. This intuition helped her figure out a solution to any given problem in a tactical situation. She also had regenerative healing that helped her heal from injuries far quicker than others, but clearly her healing abilities were not that strong. When Mask gave her the tentacled arms, they helped her with a tactical advantage, but this was a temporary thing because after M-Day, she lost those tentacles. Other than this ability of hers, she is a very skilled combatant and a very capable leader. She is a skilled huntress and tracker, and even without her mutant powers, she has what it takes to survive. Marvelous verdict. Kalisto is a character that we can all see a little bit of ourselves in. She struggles with her fair share of insecurities, and while her insecurities weigh heavily on her, she is so much more than that. And it is proven to her and us through her stories. She is kind, sympathetic, and someone with whom you can reason. She knows how to be a good leader, and she cares about her people. All of these qualities make her an amazing character, and her character arc of realizing that she is perfect to her disfigurements is truly heartwarming. While Daniel Ramirez's interpretation of Kalisto was cool and all, we're hoping for a reboot of her character to see the true Kalisto that we have followed for so many years.
If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.